Picture, if you will, the world as it existed at the very edge of recorded memory. We must drift back through the fog of millennia, past the steel and glass of our modern cities, past the smoking chimneys of the industrial age, and even past the stone castles of medieval Europe. We travel until the timeline dissolves into the heat and dust of the Fertile Crescent, some 5,000 years ago. Imagine yourself standing under the heavy, golden sun of ancient Sumer. The light here is different, unfiltered, relentless, a white-hot presence that bakes the clay of the earth into a cracked and thirsty mosaic. The air is thick, carrying the primal sense of a nascent civilization, the smell of wet mud from the banks of the Euphrates, the smoke of cooking fires curling from reed huts, and the musk of livestock. But cutting through these earthly odors is something sweeter, something faint yet intoxicating, carried on the dry wind that sweeps across the plains. Follow this wind to the fields. There, rippling like a crimson ocean against the beige canvas of the desert, stands the crop that will shape the destiny of the human species. These are the poppies, Papaver somniferum. To the eye, they are a thing of fragile, trembling beauty. Their petals are a vibrant, shocking red, or sometimes a pale, ghostly white, standing like silent sentinels over the dawn of civilization. They nod in the breeze, their heads heavy, their stems coated in a fine silver-blue fuzz. In the morning light, the dew clings to them like jewels, and as the sun climbs higher, the flowers seem to glow with an inner fire. To the ancient farmers who tend these fields, this is not merely a flower to be admired for its aesthetic. It is a tool, a vessel, a sacred entity. The Sumerians, those architects of the first cities, the inventors of the first written words, looked upon this plant with a mixture of reverence and necessity. In the soft clay of their tablets, pressed with the wedge-shaped stylus of the scribe, they gave it a name, Hul-Gil. It translates, with a profound and simple elegance, as the plant of joy. But the joy it offered was not the frantic, energetic joy of a celebration or the clear-headed joy of a sunrise. It was a heavy, lidded thing. It was the joy of burden released, of pain silenced, of a world that suddenly, miraculously, ceased to scream. Let us look closer at the life cycle of this enigmatic plant, for in its biology lies the secret of its power. The poppy is an ephemeral creature. The flower blooms for only a short time, its petals delicate as tissue paper, fluttering in the heat. But when the petals fall, they leave behind the true prize. The center of the flower swells into a seed pod, a rounded, bulbous capsule the size of a walnut, crowned with a star-shaped stigma. It stands green and firm, looking like a miniature globe or a tiny, sleeping head. Inside this pod, nature has hidden a chemical architecture of staggering complexity, a molecular key designed to fit perfectly into the locks of the human nervous system. But to access it, one must perform a ritual of harvest that has remained unchanged for 5,000 years. Picture the hands of the ancient harvester. They are rough, stained with the soil of Mesopotamia. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long purple shadows across the fields, the harvester approaches the pod. In his hand, he holds a small, curved blade, perhaps made of bronze or sharp obsidian. With the precision of a surgeon and the reverence of a priest, he makes a shallow incision along the flank of the green capsule. He must be careful too deep, and he cuts into the seeds, ruining the crop. Too shallow, and the milk will not flow. He scores the skin of the plant, a vertical wound. And then, the plant begins to weep. From the cut, a milky white latex bleeds out. It beads upon the surface of the pod, gleaming like pearls in the twilight. This is the raw essence of opium. It is the lifeblood of the poppy, a defense mechanism against insects, but to the human animal, it is something else entirely. The harvester does not collect it immediately. He leaves the field, allowing the night air to work its alchemy. Over the hours of darkness, as the stars wheel overhead, the same stars the Sumerian astronomers charted with such precision, the milky sap oxidizes. It darkens, turning from white to a sticky, resinous brown. It hardens into a gum. When the harvester returns at dawn, he scrapes this brown gum from the pod. This substance, this bitter, dark resin, is the condensed tear of the flower. This is the substance that would travel from the baskets of Sumerian peasants to the chalices of kings. It was nature's most potent, paradoxical gift, a substance that could mimic the embrace of sleep or the stillness of death. In a world without aspirin, without anesthesia, without antibiotics, pain was a constant, roaring companion to existence. A toothache, a broken bone, a difficult childbirth, a festering wound. These were not merely inconveniences, they were all-consuming agonies that could last for days or weeks. Into this world of raw, unmitigated suffering, the poppy arrived as a divine mercy. In the temples of Mesopotamia and the infirmaries of Egypt, the resin was whispered about with reverence. The physicians and priests, often one and the same, understood that this brown gum possessed a spirit. When dissolved in wine or rolled into a small pill and swallowed, it did not merely numb the body, it altered the soul. It dissolved anxiety. It slowed the frantic racing of the heart. It deepened the breath. It pulled a veil over the harshness of reality, replacing the searing heat of the desert and the ache of labor with a cool, floating detachment. It was the only force capable of silencing the screams of the wounded and lulling the anxious into a dreamless void. As the centuries drifted by, the knowledge of the poppy flowed down the great rivers, moving from the Tigris and Euphrates to the Nile. We travel now in our minds to ancient Egypt during the height of the pharaonic dynasties. Here the poppy found a second home in the rich black silt of the Nile Delta. The Egyptians, with their obsession for order and their deep understanding of the pharmacological arts, embraced the drug. They called the extracted opium Shepen. The city of Thebes became so famous for its poppy fields that the drug was often referred to as Theban opium, a brand name of the ancient world that signified purity and potency. Imagine the interior of an Egyptian pharmacy, a cool stone room shielded from the blinding glare of the sun. The walls are lined with alabaster jars and clay vessels. The air smells of cedar oil, myrrh, and the distinct bitter earthiness of the poppy. A physician, his head shaved, his linen robes crisp and white, consults a scroll of papyrus. This is the Ebers Papyrus, a medical encyclopedia of the era. In its columns of hieratic script, he finds the remedy for a crying child or a sufferer of spasms. He takes a small measure of the dark opium resin and mixes it with the excrement of flies, a binding agent used in the belief it held magical properties, or dissolves it in sweet wine. He administers the draught. The effect is immediate. The crying ceases. The tension leaves the muscles. The patient enters a state that is neither fully awake nor fully asleep, a twilight zone of comfort. The Egyptians believed that the poppy was a gift from the god Ra, or perhaps associated with the magician goddess Isis, who used her knowledge of plants to heal the gods themselves. But even here, in the golden light of Egypt, the duality of the drug was known. It was a tool of mercy, yes, but it was also a tool of silence. It was used to quiet the sprawling households of the wealthy, to sedate the sick, and, in higher doses, to ease the dying across the threshold into the afterlife. The poppy stood at the gateway between the two worlds, a guardian of the border between being and nothingness. The trade routes expanded, carrying the resin in small, juglet-shaped vessels known as bilbil jugs. These pottery containers, shaped like the inverted poppy capsule itself, have been found by archaeologists scattered across the Levant, a testament to the first global drug trade. The Phoenicians, masters of the sea, carried the hul gil to the islands of the Mediterranean, to Crete, to Cyprus, and finally to the rocky shores of Greece. Here, in the cradle of Western philosophy and myth, the poppy took on a new, profound symbolism. The Greeks, with their propensity to turn every natural phenomenon into a narrative of gods and monsters, wove the poppy into the very fabric of their cosmology. They saw the red flower not just as medicine, but as the physical manifestation of sleep itself. They told stories of Hypnos, the god of sleep, a gentle deity who moved softly through the world, touching the foreheads of the weary with a branch of dripping poppy water. Where Hypnos went, care vanished, pain dissolved. But Hypnos had a twin brother, Thanatos, the god of death. The Greeks understood, perhaps better than any before them, that sleep and death were siblings, separated only by a matter of degree. The poppy belonged to both. Consider the iconography of the time. Statues of Hypnos show him crowned with poppy capsules. The goddess Demeter, the mother of the harvest, is often depicted holding wheat in one hand and poppies in the other. The myth tells us that in her inconsolable grief over the loss of her daughter Persephone to the underworld, Demeter refused to eat or sleep. The earth began to die. It was only by consuming the poppy that she could find a moment of respite from her sorrow, a brief cessation of the agony of loss, allowing the world to bloom again. Here, the Greeks codified a truth that would haunt humanity for the next 3,000 years. The poppy treats not just the pain of the broken bone, but the pain of the broken heart. It is the medicine of sorrow. In the epics of Homer, we hear echoes of this substance. In the Odyssey, we are told of Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships, mixing a drug called nepenthe into the wine of her guests. Nepenthe, literally, that which chases away sorrow. It was said that whoever drank this mixture would not shed a tear for a whole day, even if his mother and father died, even if his brother or son were slaughtered before his eyes. What else could this nepenthe be but the milk of the poppy? It was the ultimate detachment, the chemical wall erected between the human soul and the tragic nature of the human condition. As the torch of history passed from Greece to Rome, the poppy traveled with it. The Roman Empire, a machine of war and conquest, ran on the blood of its legions and the wheat of its provinces, but it was lubricated by the resin of the poppy. The Roman physicians, most notably the great Galen, codified the use of opium in complex recipes known as theriacs. These were electuaries, thick, treacle-like mixtures containing dozens of ingredients, viper flesh, spices, honey, but the active heart, the engine of the medicine, was always opium. Galen spoke of the drug with the authority of a man who had seen the insides of the gladiatorial arenas. He described it as the hand of God, a substance that could resist poison and cure all maladies. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, the Stoic who wrote of duty and resilience, was known to take a daily dose of theriac. Historians whisper that the calm detachment found in his meditations, that ability to look upon the chaos of the world with a steady, unblinking gaze, may have been aided by the gentle, numbing hum of the poppy in his veins. In the bustling markets of Rome, opium was sold freely. It was a commodity, as essential as grain or oil. It was the sedative of the people, a way to endure the crowding, the filth, and the brutality of ancient urban life. But let us pause and consider the experience of the ancient user. We must strip away the modern stigma, the image of the needle and the alleyway, and understand the relationship as it was then. For the ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, or Roman, the ingestion of opium was a communion with a mystery. There was no understanding of receptors or alkaloids. There was only the plant and its effect. Imagine swallowing the bitter pill or drinking the infused wine. First, there is the taste acrid, earthy, repulsive to the tongue, a warning from nature that is ignored. Then, the waiting. Slowly, a warmth begins to spread from the stomach, radiating outward to the limbs. The knots of tension in the shoulders unravel. The throbbing of the injury fades, not because the injury is healed, but because the mind no longer cares about it. The breath slows down, becoming deep and rhythmic, like the tides of the ocean. The noise of the world, the shouting of merchants, the crying of children, the barking of dogs, seems to retreat into the distance, as if heard through a thick pane of glass. A heavy sensation settles behind the eyes. The eyelids droop. This is the nod, the state of semi-consciousness where dreams bleed into reality. In this state, the hungry man feels full, the cold man feels warm, the grieving mother feels a strange, distant peace. It is a return to the womb, a suspension of the struggle for survival. It is easy to see why the ancients viewed this as a spiritual experience. To be free of pain, to be free of want, to be free of fear, was this not the definition of paradise? However, the plant of joy exacted a price, even then. The ancients were not blind to the dark side of the poppy. They noticed that those who drank the wine of the poppy too often began to need it. The body, in its infinite adaptability, grew used to the presence of the drug. The dose that once brought sleep now only brought normalcy. To stop was to invite a sickness of the bones, a restlessness that clawed at the skin, a misery that dwarfed the original pain. They called this the slavery to the poppy, though they lacked the clinical language of addiction. They saw it as a spiritual trap. The plant that offered freedom from pain also took away the will. The lotus eaters of the Odyssey, who forgot their homes and their duties to sit in blissful apathy, were a warning. The poppy could hollow out a man, leaving him a husk, content to stare at the wall while his fields went fallow and his family starved. It was the sleeping giant within the chemical soul of the plant, a force of entropy that sought to pull the living back into the inorganic dust. Yet, for thousands of years, this balance was maintained. The poppy was respected, feared, and used. It was a crude instrument, a blunt force. The raw opium gum contained dozens of different alkaloids, morphine, codeine, thebaine, papaverine, all mixed together by nature in varying concentrations. The dosage was unpredictable. One batch might soothe a cough, another might stop the heart. It was a game of chance played with biology. As the Roman Empire crumbled and the lights of Europe dimmed into the Dark Ages, the knowledge of the poppy was preserved by the Islamic world. The great Arab physicians, inheriting the texts of Galen and the Greeks, refined the use of opium. They traded it along the Silk Road, introducing it to India and China, where it would eventually take root with world-altering consequences. But for a long time, the poppy remained simply a plant. It was a dried juice, a sticky gum, a medicine cabinet staple found in the bazaar. It sat in the jars of apothecaries, a brown, unassuming lump. It waited in the saddlebags of merchants crossing the Hindu Kush. It waited in the fields of Afghanistan and Turkey, blooming year after year, dropping its seeds, weeping its milk. Humanity held this raw power in its hands, respecting the plant as a gateway to the divine, unaware of the monster that lay dormant within its molecular structure. The ancients could crush the pod, they could dissolve the gum, they could eat the resin, but they could not unlock the true, terrifying potency hidden inside. They could not separate the angel from the demon. They dealt with the mixture, the choir of chemicals singing together. They did not know that one single voice within that choir, one specific molecule, was responsible for the heavy eyelids and the banished pain. They did not know that by isolating that voice, by stripping away the other compounds, they would create something that would transcend medicine and become a force of history in its own right. The poppy waited. It waited for the alchemists to put away their transmutation circles and for the chemists to pick up their beakers. It waited for the lens of the microscope and the flame of the Bunsen burner. It waited for a young man in a German pharmacy to ask a question that had never been asked before. What is the soul of this plant? But that is a story for the future. For now, let us remain in the ancient world under the starlight of the desert. The wind rustles through the dry stalks of the harvested field. The air is cooling. The scent of the earth is strong. The whole gill, the plant of joy, sleeps in its jar, a silent brown resin, dreaming of the day it will be awakened, purified and unleashed upon a world that is not ready for the intensity of its embrace. The miracle medicine is still a miracle, and the curse is still a whisper, faint and easily ignored, lost in the vast, quiet breathing of the sleeping centuries. Move forward now through the corridors of time, leaving the sun-baked fields for the dimly lit, dusty laboratory of a 19th-century apothecary. The golden heat of the Sumerian desert fades into the cool, damp gray of northern Europe. We find ourselves in the town of Paderborn, in the region of Westphalia, Germany. It is a world of cobblestones slick with rain, of timber-framed houses leaning over narrow streets, and of gas lamps casting long, flickering shadows against the brickwork. The air here does not smell of earth and flowers, but of coal smoke, wet wool, and the sharp, biting tang of chemicals. It is the year 1804. The Industrial Revolution is a distant rumble, a gathering storm on the horizon. But here, in the quiet sanctum of the Kramer's Court Pharmacy, the old world still lingers. It is a time of glass beakers, brass scales, and the scratching of quill on parchment. The pharmacy is a place of mystery to the common man, a threshold between the herbal folklore of the past and the rigid science of the future. The shelves are lined with ceramic jars painted with Latin names: belladonna, aconitum, hyoscyamus. Dried bundles of herbs hang from the rafters, dusting the floor with pollen. In the back, away from the eyes of the customers, lies the laboratory. It is a cramped, windowless room, cluttered with the apparatus of extraction. Copper alembics, glass retorts with long, swan-like necks, mortars of heavy stone, and charcoal furnaces that glow with a dull, persistent heat. Here, a young German apprentice named Friedrich Serturner is working late into the night, guided by the flickering light of an oil lamp. He is only 20 years old, a man of humble origins, lacking the pedigree of the university professors who lecture in the great halls of Berlin or Paris. He is a garret chemist, a washer of bottles, a grinder of powders. But his eyes, reflecting the dance of the flame, burn with a fierce, quiet intelligence. He is driven by a singular obsession, a question that has haunted him during the long hours of his apprenticeship. What is the true nature of opium? For centuries, physicians had relied on raw opium to treat pain, but it was a capricious ally. One batch, harvested in a wet year, might be weak and ineffective. Another, grown under a hotter sun, might be so potent that a standard dose would stop a patient's heart. The doctors complained of this inconsistency. They called it the unruly darkness of the drug. They treated the opium gum as a single, magical substance, a chaotic mixture given by God. But Friedrich Serturner looks at the sticky brown resin sitting in his mortar and sees something else. He sees a puzzle. He believes that the sleep-inducing power, the principium somniferum, is not the gum itself, but a specific hidden spirit trapped within it. He seeks purity. He seeks the essence of sleep itself. Picture him there, in the silence of the sleeping town. The church bells of Paderborn toll the hour, a mournful sound that marks the passing of the night. But Friedrich does not hear them. He is lost in the rhythm of his work. He takes the raw opium, that dark, bitter tear of the poppy, and dissolves it in water. He adds acid, watching the liquid turn cloudy. He is playing a game of chemical hide-and-seek, using solvents to strip away the useless fats, the plant waxes, the sugars, and the gums. He is an alchemist of the modern age, trying to transmute the chaotic mud of nature into the gold of scientific certainty. The work is slow and tedious. It requires the patience of a saint and the hands of a watchmaker. Night after night, he filters the solution, pouring it through paper and cloth, watching the droplets fall one by one into the receiving flask. He heats the mixture, the smell of ammonia filling the small room, stinging his eyes and burning his throat. He adds alkali, a base to counteract the acid, hoping to force the hidden ghost to reveal itself. For weeks he achieves nothing but sludge. He creates gray precipitates that dissolve back into nothingness. He creates bitter waters that hold no power. The scientific establishment of the time believes that plant essences are acids, and that what he is looking for does not exist. They would tell him he is wasting his candle wax. But he persists. There is a stubbornness in him, a conviction born of intuition. He feels that the poppy is guarding a secret. Then, on one particular night, the chemistry shifts. As he pours ammonia into the concentrated opium extract, something miraculous happens. The dark, murky liquid begins to clear. At the bottom of the flask, a sediment begins to form. It is not the brown sludge of before, it is white. He brings the oil lamp closer, squinting through the glass. Through a series of precipitations and filtrations, he watches as the dark resin gives way to something new, white, crystalline shards that glitter like frost in the candlelight. He swirls the flask, and the crystals dance, catching the light like crushed diamonds. He has done the impossible. He has separated the molecule from the plant. He has reached into the complex biological soup of the poppy and pulled out its soul. He filters the crystals and lets them dry. They sit on a piece of watch glass, pristine, odorless, and bitter to the taste. This is the first time in human history that an alkaloid nitrogen-based active compound has been isolated from a plant. It is a watershed moment, the birth of modern pharmacology, though the world outside the shop sleeps on, unaware that the relationship between humanity and nature has just fundamentally changed. Friedrich looks at his creation. It needs a name. He thinks of the ancient stories, the myths he likely read by the same lamplight. He thinks of the Roman poet Ovid and his metamorphoses. In those tales, there is a god who dwells in a dark cave where the sun never rises, a place of eternal twilight and poppies. This god has a son, a winged spirit who can take any human form and who flits through the dreams of men, bringing them visions and sleep. The god's name is Somnus, but the son's name is Morpheus. It is a name of heavy, poetic weight. Morpheus, the shaper of dreams. Morpheus, who holds the power to mimic reality within the mind. Friedrich Serturner, with a poet's soul in a chemist's world, bestows this name upon the white crystals. He names it morphium, later anglicized to morphine. It is a tribute to the ancient understanding of the drug's power, a nod to the fact that while the science is new, the spirit is old. But the isolation is only the first step. Friedrich must know if this white dust truly holds the power of the poppy. In the tradition of the era, where ethics were loose and safety was a secondary concern, he turns to the only test subjects available, the stray dogs that wander the alleyways of Paderborn. It is a grim chapter in the story, a reminder that the history of medicine is paved with the suffering of the voiceless. He administers the crystals to the animals in their food. He watches, he takes notes. The reaction is terrifying. The dogs do not merely sleep, they fall into a stupor so deep it mimics death. Their breathing becomes shallow, their heartbeats faint. Some do not wake up. Friedrich realizes with a jolt of fear and awe that this substance is not just opium. It is 10 times stronger than the raw poppy. By stripping away the plant matter, he has concentrated the potency to a lethal degree. He has distilled the thunder into a lightning bolt. Yet, the scientific community ignores him. He publishes his findings in a small journal, but he is dismissed as a nobody, a mere assistant with delusions of grandeur. The professors in their ivory towers cannot believe that a boy in a pharmacy could outsmart the great minds of the age. For years, the discovery sits on a shelf, gathering dust, much like the crystals themselves. But Friedrich is not deterred. In 1817, over a decade later, he decides to force the world to listen. He orchestrates a dramatic, almost theatrical experiment. He gathers 3 friends, brave or perhaps foolish young men, and invites them to the laboratory. It is a scene that feels less like science and more like a séance. They gather around the table. The atmosphere is tense. Friedrich measures out the white crystals. He prepares a dose of 30 milligrams for each man and 1 for himself. They dissolve the powder in alcohol and water. They raise their glasses. A toast to science. A toast to the unknown. They drink. At first, there is only the bitterness. Then, the warmth. A feeling of happiness, of lightness, washes over them. They feel invincible. But Friedrich, the meticulous observer, urges them on. He dispenses a second dose. And then, a third. The total amount is massive, bordering on the fatal. The scene shifts from a gentleman's experiment to a nightmare. The men become pale. Their pupils constrict until they are mere pinpoints, the classic pinpoint pupils that would become the hallmark of opioid overdose. They become nauseous. They collapse onto the floor, their limbs heavy as lead. They drift into a slumber so profound that Friedrich, fighting his own drowning consciousness, realizes they are on the verge of death. He drags himself up. He forces vinegar a crude antidote down their throats. He shakes them, slaps them, screaming at them to breathe. It is a chaotic, terrifying night. They survive, barely, waking the next day with splitting headaches and a profound exhaustion. But Friedrich has his proof. He writes a new paper, detailing the effects with brutal honesty. This time, the world listens. The famous French chemist Gay-Lussac translates the work. The prestigious academies of Europe open their doors. Friedrich Serturner is hailed as a pioneer. The implications are immediate and staggering. For the first time, doctors can dose with precision. No longer must they guess at the strength of a poppy pod. They can weigh the crystals. They can administer exactly 10 milligrams or 15. The unruly darkness has been tamed. The medical world rejoices. They call it a miracle of the industrial age. It is the ultimate weapon against pain, a white knight in crystalline armor. However, as we gaze back at that flickering candle in the Paderborn lab, we see the tragic irony that Friedrich could not yet fully comprehend. In the glass flask, the crystals possess a cold, scientific beauty that belies their danger. They look pure. They look clean. They look like progress. This was the moment humanity thought it had tamed nature, believing that by isolating the cure for pain, they had stripped away the risk. They believed that the sickness caused by opium, the slavery, was due to the impurities, the dirt, and the wax of the plant. They thought the pure molecule would be safe. But in the silence of that lab, the shadow of addiction had merely been refined, sharpened, and given a new, scientific name. The demon was not in the dirt, it was in the geometry of the molecule itself. By making it stronger, by making it pure, Serturner had inadvertently created a chain of stronger steel. He had unlocked the Pandora's box of modern narcotics. As the 19th century progresses, this white powder will find a partner that will amplify its power even further. In 1853, a Scottish physician named Alexander Wood will invent the hypodermic needle. He will look at the white crystals of morphine and realize that if he dissolves them in water and injects them directly into the bloodstream, the effect is instantaneous. He, too, will believe this is safer, thinking that by bypassing the stomach, the hunger for the drug will be avoided. He will be wrong. His own wife will become the first recorded fatality of an injected morphine overdose, a tragic piety at the altar of progress. But let us return to Friedrich Serturner, alone in his lab in 1804. He is exhausted. The sun is rising over the timbered roofs of Paderborn. The oil lamp has burned low. He holds the flask of morphine crystals to the light of the dawn. He feels a sense of profound triumph. He has pulled back the veil of the material world and found the hidden machinery beneath. He has given humanity a gift. He cannot see the future soldiers of the American Civil War, tens of thousands of them, returning home with soldier's disease, their bodies craving the white powder. He cannot see the opium dens transforming into shooting galleries. He cannot see the sorrow that will flow from this flask, a river of tears to match the river of poppy milk. He sees only the science. He sees only the victory of man over matter. The alchemist's lantern flickers and dies, its job done. The age of the herbalist is over. The age of the chemist has begun. And in the quiet, dusty air of the apothecary, the white crystals wait, silent and glittering, promising a sleep deeper than any the world has ever known, a sleep from which some will never wake. The transition is complete. The ghost is out of the bottle, and it is beautiful, and it is terrible, and it is here to stay. As the 19th century wanes and the great wheel of history turns toward the modern era, the landscape of our story shifts dramatically. We leave behind the silent, candlelit isolation of Sir Turner's apothecary in Paderborn. We leave the cobblestones and the timber-framed houses of the old world. The timeline accelerates, driven by the rhythmic pounding of pistons and the hiss of escaping steam. We find ourselves now in the final years of the 1800s, a time when the industrial world is roaring to life with a ferocity that shakes the very ground. Germany has become the forge of Europe. The Rhine River, once the subject of romantic paintings and folklore, is now a highway of commerce, its banks lined with the cathedrals of a new religion. The factory. Chimneys rise like blackened fingers against the gray sky, belching thick plumes of coal smoke that mix with the fog, creating a perpetual twilight over the cities. The air is no longer sweet with the scent of hay and rain. It tastes of sulfur, iron, and progress. It is an era of immense ambition, where humanity believes that through the power of engineering and chemistry, it can master the material world. We are in the age of steel, of railways, and of the synthetic miracle. In the heart of this industrial sprawl, in the city of Elberfeld, which would later merge into the chemical giant of Leverkusen, stands a complex of red brick buildings. This is the headquarters of the Bayer Company. Originally founded to create synthetic dyes from coal tar to color the textiles of the world in brilliant indigos and crimsons, the company has turned its gaze toward a more lucrative and mysterious market: the human body. Let us walk through the iron gates and into the pristine tiled halls of the pharmaceutical division. It is the year 1898. The contrast between the outside world and the inside of the laboratory is stark. Outside, there is the mud of the streets, the clamor of horse-drawn carriages, and the shouting of workers. Inside, there is a hushed, reverent silence, broken only by the clinking of glass and the scratching of pens. The air smells of antiseptic, ether, and ambition. The light here is cool and diffuse, filtering through tall windows, illuminating rows of black lab benches where men in stiff white collars and starched aprons conduct the rituals of modern science. These men are the new priesthood. They do not pray to the gods of harvest or the spirits of the poppy. They pray to the periodic table. They believe that nature is a chaotic draft that can be edited and improved upon. And right now, they are looking for a solution to a problem that is ravaging the lungs of the world. To understand the urgency of their work, we must first understand the shadow that hangs over the 19th century. It is the shadow of the White Plague, tuberculosis. In the crowded tenements of London, Paris, New York, and Berlin, where the industrial workforce sleeps in damp, sunless rooms, consumption is king. It is a slow, wasting death. It hollows out the chest, pales the skin, and brings a cough that tears at the throat from morning until night. It is a sound that defines the era, a hacking, wet, relentless cough that echoes through the orphanages and the palaces alike. For decades, the only mercy for these sufferers has been opium, and later, morphine. The doctors prescribe it freely. It soothes the cough reflex. It calms the panic of suffocation. It grants sleep to the sleepless. But the cost has become too high. The soldier's disease, morphine addiction, has spread from the battlefield to the household. The sanitariums are full of patients who have been cured of their pain only to be enslaved by their medicine. The medical community is desperate. They need a non-addictive substitute, a medicine that soothes the lungs and calms the cough without the shackles of the poppy's grip. They are looking for the holy grail of pharmacology, a painkiller without the price. Enter Heinrich Dresser. Picture him standing at the head of the laboratory, a man of imposing presence. He is the head of Bayer's pharmacological laboratory, a man of science and precision, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that gleam with the cold light of commercial intellect. Dresser is not a dreamer like Sir Turner. He is a pragmatist. He understands that a drug is only as good as its marketability. He is looking for a product that will secure Bayer's dominance in the new century. Under his command works a younger, quieter chemist named Felix Hoffmann. Hoffman is a dutiful man, a brilliant synthesizer who spends his days amidst the fumes of the workbench. Legend tells us that Hoffman is driven by a personal motivation. His own father suffers from crippling rheumatism, and the standard treatments are too harsh for his stomach. Hoffman is searching for relief for his father, tinkering with the structure of salicylic acid to create what will eventually be known as aspirin. But in this search, during a fateful 2-week period in August of 1897, he turns his attention back to the poppy. Hoffman and Dresser are revisiting an old experiment. Decades earlier, an English chemist had tried mixing morphine with various acids but had abandoned the work. The Bayer chemists believe that by modifying the morphine molecule, they can change its nature. They apply the same logic they used to make dye stick to cotton: acetylation. They take the morphine molecule, that complex architectural wonder isolated by Sir Turner, and they seek to add 2 acetyl groups to its structure. Imagine the process as a culinary act of high chemistry. In the round-bottomed flask, the morphine crystals are dissolved. They are mixed with acetic anhydride, a derivative of vinegar, pungent and sharp. The mixture is heated. As the temperature rises, a chemical wetting takes place. The acetic anhydride attacks the morphine molecule, latching onto it, bonding to the oxygen and hydrogen atoms at specific points. It caps the ends of the molecule, smoothing out its rough edges, making it more lipophilic, more soluble in fat. This is the crucial invisible change. By making the molecule fat-soluble, they are unknowingly giving it a key to the kingdom of the brain. Morphine, in its natural state, struggles to cross the blood-brain barrier, that dense protective mesh of cells that guards the human mind from toxins. It enters slowly, like a visitor knocking at a heavy door. But this new compound, this diacetylmorphine, is slippery. It is ghostly. It can slide through the barrier as easily as water through a sieve. Hoffman watches the reaction cool. The liquid crystallizes. He filters it, washes it, and purifies it. What remains is a white, crystalline powder, not unlike the morphine from which it came, but chemically distinct. It is diacetylmorphine. It sits in the glass dish, innocent and inert, waiting for its first trial. Dresser takes charge of the testing. The protocols of 1898 are not the rigorous, ethically bound trials of the future. They are rough, immediate, and often personal. The substance is tested on frogs, on rabbits, and eventually on the workers of the Bayer factory themselves. The employees, often suffering from the coughs and colds of the industrial winter, are given the powder. The reports that come back are astonishing. The workers do not just report that their coughs have vanished, though they have, suppressed by a potency far greater than codeine. They report something else. They describe a sensation of immense, swelling power. The heaviness of fatigue lifts from their limbs. The gray gloom of the factory floor seems to brighten. Their breathing feels deep and effortless, as if their lungs have suddenly expanded to take in more air than is naturally possible. Fear dissolves. Anxiety evaporates. They feel bigger than life. They feel heroish. In German, the word is heroisch. It implies strength, valor, a state of being above the common struggle. When Heinrich Dresser hears these descriptions, he knows he has found his name. He will not call it diacetylmorphine. That is too clinical, too dry. He will name it after the feeling it bestows. He names it heroin. It is a masterstroke of branding. The name itself is a promise. It suggests that this powder is not a crutch for the weak, but a tonic for the strong. It aligns the drug with the mythological heroes of old, with Hercules, with Achilles, suggesting that by taking it, one can transcend the frailties of the human body. In this moment of hubris, the bottle is labeled and the cork is sealed. The world believes it has finally engineered a perfect peace. Bayer moves with the speed of the industrial age. The marketing machine roars to life. Heroin is not hidden in the back of the apothecary. It is heralded in the medical journals and the newspapers. Beautiful, amber glass bottles are produced, etched with the Bayer Crosse seal of quality and trust. The labels are typography masterpieces of the era, promising a sedative for coughs. Posters appear in pharmacy windows and doctors' offices. They depict healthy, robust people, mothers, fathers, workers, living lives free of pain. There are advertisements, now infamous, showing children reaching for the bottle, with slogans that reassure the parent that the medicine is safe for the nursery. Heroin, the ads proclaim, clears the complexion, gives buoyancy to the mind, and regulates the bowels. It is sold as a non-addictive substitute for morphine. This is the central, tragic selling point. Dresser and his team genuinely believe, or perhaps desperately want to believe, that by modifying the molecule they have removed the addictive hook. They argue that because the patients do not feel the immediate, heavy sedation of morphine, but rather a stimulating rush, they are not being enslaved. They are tragically wrong. They do not understand the mechanism of the Trojan horse they have built. When heroin is swallowed or injected, it rushes into the bloodstream. Because of those two extra acetyl groups, the wings, Hoffman added it, flies past the blood-brain barrier with terrifying speed. But once it is inside the sanctuary of the brain, the enzymes of the body strip those wings away. The molecule reverts. It turns back into morphine. The result is a massive, sudden flood of morphine directly into the opioid receptors of the brain, far more intense than if the user had taken morphine itself. It is an explosion of euphoria, followed by a profound, blanketed silence. The brain, overwhelmed by this artificial peace, stops producing its own painkillers. It begins to rewire itself to demand the source of the joy. The non-addictive substitute is, in fact, the most addictive substance the world has ever known. But in 1898, the darkness is yet to fall. For a brief, golden moment, heroin is the wonder of the age. Doctors prescribe it for everything. It is given for bronchitis, for asthma, for tuberculosis. It is given to women for menstrual cramps, and to men for the weariness of labor. It is even prescribed for nymphomania and hysteria. The world quiets down. The coughing stops. The sanitariums fall silent. Imagine the bedside of a patient in a turn-of-the-century hospital. Outside, the winter wind howls. Inside, the patient, thin and racked with the white plague, takes a spoonful of the sweet, thick syrup. Within minutes, the tearing in the chest subsides. A warm, golden glow spreads from the stomach. The fear of death, which has hovered in the corner of the room for months, steps back. The patient feels a surge of vitality, a false dawn of health. They sit up, they breathe, they smile. For the doctor watching, it is a miracle. He has defeated the suffering. He writes in his ledger, "Patient improved, spirits high, respiration easy." Heinrich Dresser is toasted in the scientific societies of Berlin. He is the man who tamed the poppy. He dismisses Aspirin Hoffman's other discovery as a drug with no future because it is hard on the heart, preferring to pour all of Bayer's resources into heroin. It is an irony so sharp it cuts through the pages of history. The drug that would save billions of lives, aspirin, is shelved, while the drug that would destroy millions, heroin, is crowned king. The bottle of heroin becomes a fixture in the home. It sits on the shelf next to the iodine and the bandages. It is part of the domestic landscape, as common as tea. It is sent in care packages to soldiers. It is carried in the kits of explorers heading to the poles and the jungles. It is the pinnacle of Victorian medicine, the ultimate triumph of the rational mind over the chaotic body. But time, like a river, erodes all certainties. Slowly, cracks begin to appear in the porcelain facade of the miracle. A year passes, then two. The doctors begin to notice something unsettling. The patients are coming back. They are not coming back because their coughs have returned. They are coming back because the bottle is empty. They speak of a hollow feeling when the medicine wears off. They speak of a restlessness that makes their skin crawl, a flu that only the syrup can cure. They are using more. The teaspoon becomes a tablespoon. The tablespoon becomes the whole bottle. Dresser and Bayer defend their creation. They claim these are isolated cases, people of weak constitution. But the letters to the medical journals begin to change tone. The praise turns to concern, and then to alarm. The heroic feeling is revealed to be a trap. The chest-swelling power is a delusion. The patients are not heroes. They are prisoners. We stand now in the laboratory of 1898, freezing this moment in time. The cork is fresh, the label is crisp. The liquid inside is clear and promising. We look at it with the benefit of hindsight, knowing what is to come. We know that this bottle is a ghost that will haunt the coming century. We know that the cure will birth a plague of its own, moving from the pharmacy to the jazz clubs, from the jazz clubs to the veins of the counterculture, and finally to the devastating epidemics of the modern world. But here, in the tiled halls, the air still smells of antiseptic and ambition. The machines hum with the confidence of the industrial age. The chemists wipe their brows, satisfied with a job well done. They believe they have fixed the flaw in nature's design. They do not hear the silent laughter of the poppy, which has once again outwitted those who sought to tame it. They have not conquered the plant, they have merely distilled its vengeance. The sun sets over the Bayer factory. The smoke from the chimneys drifts across the Rhine, merging with the mists of the river, obscuring the view of the future. The heroic age has begun, but the heroes are sleepwalking toward a precipice, carrying their amber bottles like lanterns into a darkness they do not yet understand. The synthesis is complete. The ghost has been given a body, and it is ready to walk among us. Drift now, gently and slowly, away from the roaring furnaces of the industrial age and the antiseptic halls of the German laboratories. Let the noise of the factories fade into a low, rhythmic hum, and then into silence. We are moving inward, traveling from the public world of science and commerce into the private, sacred sanctuary of the home. The timeline settles in the first decade of the 20th century, the twilight of the Victorian era and the dawn of the Edwardian. It is a time of heavy velvets, intricate wallpapers, and a profound, quiet respect for the domestic sphere. Picture, if you will, the soft, gas-lit intimacy of a nursery in a London townhouse, or perhaps a brownstone in New York. The world outside is held at bay by thick brick walls and heavy brocade curtains. Outside the fog, the famous pea souper of the aeropresses against the window panes, a swirling gray ghost that muffles the clip-clop of horse hooves on the cobblestones and halos the street lamps in a spectral mist. It is a cold night, the kind that seeps into the bones, the kind of damp winter chill that the Victorians feared more than almost anything else, for it brought with it the specter of illness. But inside, the room is a warm, enclosed universe. A coal fire crackles softly in the hearth, the embers glowing with a comforting, pulsing heat. The light in the room comes not from the harsh glare of electricity, which is still a novelty, but from the hiss of a gas lamp on the wall. The flame is a small blue and yellow tongue, casting long, dancing shadows that stretch across the floorboards and play upon the ceiling. The air smells of coal dust, lavender sachets, and the faint, sweet scent of warmed milk. In the center of the room stands a crib, or perhaps a small iron bed painted white. Inside lies a child, and watching over the child is a mother. Her silhouette is etched against the firelight, her posture one of exhaustion and vigilance. She has been awake for nights on end. The sound that fills the room is not the peaceful rhythm of breath, but the harsh, dry bark of a winter cough. It is a sound that tears at the throat of the child and at the heart of the mother. In this era, before antibiotics, before the conquest of infectious disease, a cough was not merely an annoyance, it was a harbinger. It was the knock of mortality at the nursery door. Whooping cough, bronchitis, pneumonia, these were the wolves that circled the Victorian home, snatching children from their beds. The mother feels a desperate helplessness. She has tried the poultices of mustard and onion on the chest. She has tried the steam from the kettle. She has whispered prayers into the darkness, but the coughing continues, a relentless spasm that prevents sleep, that exhausts the small body, that leaves the child pale and gasping. She needs help. She needs a weapon to fight the dark. She turns to the bedside table. There, resting on a delicate lace doily, sitting amidst a clutter of silver spoons and water glasses, sits a small, unassuming object. It is a bottle. It is made of glass, tinted a deep, rich amber. The color is functional, designed to protect the contents from the degrading effects of sunlight, but in the firelight, it glows with an inner, golden warmth. It looks like a jewel. It looks like a talisman. This is the amber bottle of heroin. It is a common sight, as ordinary in this time as a hairbrush, a tin of tea, or a bar of soap. There is no lock on it. There is no warning label sketched with a skull and crossbones. Instead, the label is a masterpiece of typography, elegant and reassuring. It bears the trusted name of Bayer, or perhaps a local pharmacy's proprietary blend. It reads glycoheroin, or heroin cough syrup. It promises, in script that conveys authority and science, a sedative for coughs. It promises rest. It promises health. To the mother, this bottle does not represent a vice. It does not represent danger. It represents the pinnacle of modern medical progress. It is the miraculous fruit of the scientific revolution brought into her home to serve her family. There is no stigma here, only the quiet trust in a brand name. She believes in it as she believes in the gaslight and the steam engine as a tool of civilization designed to push back the chaos of nature. Watch now, in slow motion, the ritual of administration. It is a scene played out in millions of homes, from the high-ceilinged apartments of Paris to the farmhouses of the American Midwest. The mother picks up the bottle. The glass is cool and smooth against her palm. She uncorks it. A faint aroma drifts up, not the acrid smell of the raw poppy field, but a scent that has been civilized, masked with glycerin, spices, and wild cherry. It smells thick and sweet. She takes a silver spoon, perhaps one inherited from a grandmother, and tilts the bottle. The liquid pours out, heavy and viscous, like dark honey. It catches the light of the fire, a glimmering pool of relief. She approaches the child. She speaks soft, soothing words, promising that this will make the hurt stop, that this will bring the Sandman. The child, trusting and weary, opens their mouth. The spoon is tipped, the liquid is swallowed, and then the miracle happens. We must understand the pharmacology to understand the seduction. The syrup travels down the throat, coating the irritated membranes. It enters the stomach and is absorbed into the bloodstream. The molecule, that modified lipophilic ghost we saw created in the labs of Elberfeld, rushes to the brain. It crosses the barrier with ease. It finds the opioid receptors in the brainstem, the ancient reptilian parts of the nervous system that control the cough reflex and the perception of pain. It acts like a key fitting into a lock. It turns the key, and the machinery of suffering simply stops. The effect is almost instantaneous. The coughing fit that has lasted for hours ceases. The tightness in the chest vanishes, replaced by a feeling of immense, expanding warmth. The anxiety of being unable to breathe dissolves into a sensation of floating safety. The child's breathing slows, becoming deep and rhythmic. The eyelids grow heavy, not with the natural fatigue of the day, but with a chemically induced twilight. The child sinks back into the pillow. The tension leaves their small limbs. A profound silence descends upon the room. For the mother, this silence is the sound of salvation. She watches the chest rise and fall peacefully. She touches the forehead, which feels cooler now. She believes she has cured the illness. She believes she has won the battle against the winter night. She caps the bottle and places it back on the doily, treating it with the reverence due to a holy relic. She, too, can now sleep. The household is at peace. This scene creates a sense of tragic irony that is almost painful to behold from our vantage point in history. We are witnessing a wolf dressed in the velvet robes of a healer, invited warmly into the sanctuary of the home. We see the innocence of that spoon, the liquid glinting in the firelight, and we know what the mother does not. We know that the silence is not a cure, it is a suppression. We know that the molecule is not just silencing the cough, it is depressing the respiration, slowing the gut, and rewriting the neural pathways of the developing brain. But let us expand our view beyond the nursery. Let us drift out the window, through the fog, and into the town. The amber bottle is everywhere. It is the era of the patent medicine, where every ailment has a cure sold in a glass bottle. You can walk into a pharmacy on Main Street, a place of mahogany counters and glass jars filled with colored waters. You can ask the pharmacist, a man of standing in the community, for something for your husband's back pain, or your own female troubles, or the baby's colic. He does not hesitate. He reaches for the heroin. It is sold in lozenges for sore throats. It is sold in tablets for headaches. It is mixed with salts for digestion. It is even found in the mail-order catalogs of Sears, Roebuck & Company, nestled between advertisements for farm equipment and corsets. For $1.50, you can order a kit that includes a syringe, 2 needles, and 2 vials of heroin, delivered to your doorstep with the morning post. It is marketed to the exhaustion of the age. The Industrial Revolution has created a tired worldmen, worn out by the factory, women worn out by the home. Heroin offers a pause button. It offers a moment of heroic strength followed by a blissful detachment. Picture the sheer ubiquity of it. It is in the pockets of the factory workers, taken to dull the ache of repetitive labor. It is in the reticules of high society ladies, taken to soothe the nerves of a rigid social calendar. It is in the medicine chests of the polar explorers, carried to the ends of the earth as a defense against the ultimate cold. The molecule has woven itself into the fabric of domestic life, silencing the sick and comforting the dying, masking its true nature under the guise of modern wellness. It was a time of profound societal ignorance, a brief golden twilight before the dawn of realization. The world was operating under the assumption that if a substance came from a laboratory, if it was packaged by a corporation, and if it was sold by a man in a white coat, it must be safe. There was a naivete to the era, a belief that science was a benevolent parent that would only provide gifts, never curses. The concept of addiction as a physiological disease was still in its infancy, often dismissed as a moral failing or a weakness of character. When a patient found they could not stop taking the cough syrup, when they felt the flu coming on the moment the bottle was empty, they did not blame the medicine. They blamed themselves. Or, more often, they believed they were still sick. Return to the nursery. A week has passed. The cough has gone, but the child is irritable, restless, and tearful. The mother worries. The illness is lingering, she thinks. He is still weak. And so, with the best of intentions, with a heart full of love and concern, she reaches for the amber bottle again. Just a small spoonful, she whispers, to help you rest. The child drinks. The relief is immediate. The tears stop. The smile returns. The mother nods, satisfied that her judgment was correct. The medicine is working. She does not see that she is feeding the hunger she has inadvertently created. She does not see the loop closing. She does not see that the sickness she is treating is now the withdrawal from the cure. This is the tragedy of the amber bottle. It did not smash down the door. It unlocked it from the inside. It did not present itself as a demon. It presented itself as a nanny. It co-opted the instincts of care and nurturing. It used the love of a parent for a child as the vehicle for its own propagation. The shadows in the room lengthen as the fire dies down. The fog outside thickens, pressing against the glass like a living thing trying to get in. The nursery, so warm and safe, feels suddenly fragile. We are witnessing the incubation of a disaster. In these quiet, gas-lit rooms, a generation is being primed. The receptors are being opened. The tolerance is building. The ghost of the poppy, refined and disguised, has taken up residence at the bedside. And yet, the mood remains calm, almost hypnotic. There is no panic yet. The newspapers are not yet screaming about dope fiends. The laws have not yet been written. The prisons are not yet full. It is the suspended moment before the crash. It is the silence of the snow falling on the city, burying everything in white, hiding the shapes of things underneath. The amber bottle sits on the lace doily, reflecting the dying embers. It looks beautiful. It looks innocent. It holds the memories of the Sumerian fields and the German labs, distilled into a few ounces of syrup. It waits for the next cough, the next cry, the next moment of human need. It is the most dangerous object in the house, and it is the most loved. As we drift away from this scene, leaving the mother to her vigil and the child to their chemical sleep, we feel a deep, melancholic weight. We look back at the Victorian window, a square of yellow light in the dark city, and we wish we could warn them. We wish we could tap on the glass and whisper the truth, but we cannot. We are separated by the wall of time. We can only watch as the bottle is uncorked again, and again, and again, pouring its liquid silence into the stream of history, changing the world one spoonful at a time. The wolf is not at the door. The wolf is already by the bed, and it is singing a lullaby. The atmosphere shifts. The timeline turns a corner, sharp and decisive. We watch as the warm, golden glow of the Victorian hearth fades into the distance, like a dying ember swallowed by the night. The lace doilies, the heavy velvet curtains, and the polite, gas-lit intimacy of the nursery dissolve. In their place, a new light flickers into existence, the harsh, electric buzzing of neon. It is a blue and red hum that spells out hotel, bar, and open in the wet streets of a new century. The fog that pressed against the window panes of London has transformed into the steam rising from the subway grates of New York City and the rain-slicked alleyways of Paris. We have arrived in the mid-20th century, an era of jagged edges, noir shadows, and a profound, disillusioning truth. The curtain has been pulled back. The heroic medicine, the savior of the coughing child, the miracle of the Bayer laboratory, has been unmasked. The world has awakened from its chemically induced twilight to find a monster sitting at the foot of the bed. The realization did not happen all at once, but in a slow, horrified cascade of medical reports and societal breakdowns. The doctors who once prescribed the syrup with a smile began to see the hollow eyes of their patients returning again and again, not for health, but for the desperate maintenance of a new, artificial normality. The sedative for coughs was revealed to be a thief of the soul. And so, the gavel fell. The governments of the world, realizing the Pandora's box they had left open, moved to slam it shut. In the United States, the Harrison Narcotics Tax Act of 1914 drew a line in the sand. The days of the over-the-counter miracle were over. The amber bottles were swept from the shelves of the pharmacy. The beautiful typography, the promises of health, the Bayer cross all of it was criminalized. We can imagine the sound of thousands of glass bottles shattering in the back alleys of drugstores, a cacophony of destruction as society tried to scrub away its mistake. The legal doors were bolted. The medical journals issued retractions and warnings. The miracle medicine was officially rebranded as a scourge. But here lies the fundamental truth of the molecule. It does not vanish simply because a law is written. It is a persistent ghost. It does not evaporate when the bottle is broken. Instead, it migrates. Like a stream of water blocked by a dam, it seeks a new path, flowing into the cracks and crevices of the social bedrock. It moves from the sunlit pharmacy shelf to the shadowed coat pocket. It moves from the hands of the trusted pharmacist in a white coat to the hands of the pusher in a fedora. It moves from the parlor to the pool hall, from the nursery to the jazz club, from the daylight of respectability to the neon-lit underground. It becomes a secret language spoken in the dark. This migration changes the very nature of the substance. When it was in the amber bottle, it was a syrup, thick, sweet, and medicinal. Now, stripped of its corporate packaging, It reveals its true form. It becomes a powder. Sometimes it is white as snow, refined in the clandestine labs of Marseille. Sometimes it is brown as sand, traveling from the poppy fields of Mexico. It is packaged not in glass but in small wax paper envelopes, in balloons, in folded scraps of aluminum foil. It becomes junk, smack, horse, words that carry no medical dignity, only the rough, gritty texture of the street. It is a dust of sorrow, carried on the wind of the underworld. We find ourselves now in the era of the tragic artist and the weary soul. The roaring 20s have given way to the depression, and then to the post-war anxiety of the 40s and 50s. The world has seen the horrors of global conflict, and a certain cynicism has settled over the cities. In this landscape, heroin finds a new congregation. It is no longer the drug of the coughing housewife, it is the drug of the outsider. It calls to those who feel the edges of the world too sharply, those who seek to mute the noise of existence. Enter, if you will, the smoky, subterranean world of the jazz club. It is 1948 on 52nd Street in New York, or perhaps a cellar in Paris's left bank. The air is thick, blue with cigarette smoke, swirling in the beam of a single spotlight. The room is packed, hot, and vibrating with the sound of a saxophone. The music is frantic, complex, a frenetic architecture of sound that pushes the boundaries of human expression. Bebop, hard bop. It is the sound of the modern nervous system screaming. But look at the musician. He stands in the center of the storm, a silhouette against the glare. He is holding the saxophone, his fingers flying over the pearl keys with impossible speed. Yet, his eyes are heavy-lidded. His face is a mask of stone. He is sweating, but he seems detached, floating in a cool, private ocean. He is on the nod. There is a tragic, symbiotic relationship here between the jazz musician and the molecule. The musician lives in a world of relentless pressure, the pressure to perform, the pressure of racial segregation, the pressure of a nocturnal life that never sees the sun. Heroin offers him a shield. It slows down time. To the listener, the notes are flying by at 100 miles an hour, but to the musician under the influence, the world has slowed to a crawl. He has all the time in the universe to find the next note. He feels a supreme, icy control. The anxiety of the stage vanishes. The heartbreak of his daily life dissolves. He is wrapped in a blanket of chemical indifference. We see the legendary figures of this era, Bird, Charlie Parker, standing as the archetype of this tragedy. We see the way the drug permeates the culture of the cool. To be high is to be untouchable. To be high is to be removed from the pain of being a black man in America or a starving artist in Europe. It is a way to opt out of the struggle, if only for a few hours. But the price is etched into their faces. We see the gaunt cheeks, the trembling hands before the fix, the pawned instruments. We see the velvet cage tightening. The molecule demands a tribute of spirit. It takes the genius and grinds it down. It whispers that it is the source of the creativity, that the music cannot exist without the powder, creating a myth that will trap generations of artists to come. They believe they need the poison to reach the divine, unaware that the poison is slowly eating the divinity from within. Drift now from the jazz club to the solitary room of the writer. We are in the Beat Hotel in Paris, or a cold water flat in the East Village. The walls are peeling, the radiator hisses. A typewriter sits on a rickety table next to a pile of cigarette butts and a bent spoon. This is the domain of the literary addict, the William S. Burroughs, the Alexander's trochee. Here, the drug is intellectualized. It is not just an escape, it is a philosophy. The writer sits in the chair, staring at the blank page. The world outside is loud with the demands of capitalism, of family, of the American dream that feels increasingly like a lie. He rejects it all. He chooses the algebra of need. He views the drug as a way to strip away the illusions of society, to reduce life to its most basic biological denominator. He seeks the naked lunch, the moment when everyone sees what is on the end of every fork. But watch the reality of the room. The heroic expansion of the 1890s has completely inverted. The drug does not make the writer bigger, it makes his world smaller. The timeline of the user collapses. There is no future, there is no past. There is only the cycle of the fix. The day is not measured in hours, but in the distance between the last dose and the next. The writer's universe shrinks to the size of his own veins. The grand ideas, the revolutionary thoughts, often dissolve into the gray fog of the nod, leaving behind only the frantic need to secure the next bag. The dust of sorrow covers everything: the manuscript, the clothes, the skin. It is a life lived in the waiting room of existence. Let us look closely, with the unflinching eye of the documentary lens, at the ritual itself. The amber bottle and the silver spoon of the nursery have been replaced by a darker, more industrial liturgy. The user takes the powder, the ghost of the poppy, and places it in a bent spoon or a bottle cap. They add water. They strike a match. Here, the alchemist's lantern returns, but it is no longer the oil lamp of Sir Turner's laboratory. It is the flickering flame of a matchbook, illuminating a face etched with craving. The liquid boils. A small piece of cotton is dropped in to filter the impurities, a crude mimicry of the pharmaceutical filtration process. The liquid is drawn up into the syringe, the device invented by Alexander Wood, now turned into a weapon against the self. The needle pierces the skin. It finds the vein. The plunger is depressed. The description of the effect changes here. It is no longer the gentle sleep of the ancient world or the heroic stimulation of the Bayer era. It is the flash. It is described by users as a total body orgasm, a sudden warm impact that hits the back of the neck and spreads like molten gold through the spine. It is a sensation of such profound, overwhelming wellness that it makes all other human pleasures, food, love, success, seem pale and gray by comparison. It is the feeling of being held by God. It is the feeling of finally arriving home. But this feeling is the trap. It is the bait in the snare. Because the moment it fades, the descent begins. The body, having tasted perfection, can no longer tolerate the mundane. The natural endorphins, the body's own painkillers, have withered away, atrophied by the flood of artificial opioids. When the drug leaves the receptors, the user is left naked in a blizzard. The bones ache. The skin crawls as if covered in insects. The stomach rebels. The anxiety returns, amplified 1,000 times. This is the sickness. This is the Jones. And now, the user takes the drug not to get high, but simply to feel normal. They take it to stop the screaming of their own biology. The narration of the drug changes from one of healing to one of enslavement. It is a tragic irony, precise and cruel. The very thing synthesized to cure addiction has become the definition of it. The cure for pain has become the source of ultimate pain. The environment reflects this descent. We move from the sterile tiles of the laboratory to the shooting gallery, an abandoned building, a public restroom, a rooftop. These are the temples of the New Age, places of debris and darkness. The walls are scarred with graffiti. The floor is littered with the detritus of the ritual. Here, in the shadows, the social contract is broken. The user, driven by the hunger of the molecule, will lie, steal, and betray to feed the ghost. The miracle medicine has eroded the moral architecture of the individual. Yet even in this darkness, there is a terrible, poetic gravity. The user is not merely a criminal. They are a victim of a chemical romance that went wrong. They are chasing the memory of that first golden warmth, a memory that grows fainter with every injection. They are trapped in a loop of craving and relief, a gray, timeless fog where the outside world ceases to matter. The sun rises and sets, presidents are elected, wars are fought, but for the person in the grip of the dust, there is only the needle and the spoon. The Biography of the molecule enters its most sorrowful chapter here. It is the story of potential wasted, of lights extinguished. We see the jazz musician selling his saxophone. We see the writer pawning his typewriter. We see the father walking away from his family. We see the slow erasure of the self. The poppy, which once stood so innocently in the fields of Sumer, has grown roots into the concrete of the modern city, and its vines are choking the life out of its hosts. The cultural memory of this era is stained with the tragic glamour of the doomed. We look at the black and white photographs of the time, the moody, high-contrast images of the noir world, and we see the ghost lurking in the corners. We hear it in the mournful wail of the trumpet. We read it in the fragmented, cut-up prose of the beats. It is the shadow that defines the light. It is the silence that defines the sound. As we drift through the mid-20th century, the neon lights buzz with an angry energy. The rain falls relentlessly on the pavement, washing away the innocence of the past. The golden age of the pharmacy is a distant memory, a fairy tale told to children. The reality is the cold, hard needle. The reality is the lock on the bathroom door. The reality is the silence of the overdose, the final, permanent nod from which there is no waking. The molecule has stripped off its disguise. It is no longer hiding behind the label of glycoheroin. It is naked now. It is raw power, indifferent to human suffering, a chemical imperative that demands total obedience. It has become a curse, ancient and modern all at once, a demon synthesized by science but fed by the human soul. And as the century marches on, this shadow will only lengthen, spreading from the jazz clubs of the cities to the suburbs, to the heartlands, becoming a global epidemic that will challenge the very foundations of society. But for now, let us rest in the melancholy of the moment. Picture the jazz club emptying out in the early hours of the morning. The chairs are stacked on the tables. The smoke hangs low in the stagnant air. In the alleyway outside, a solitary figure huddles against the brick wall, lighting a match, seeking a moment of peace in the heart of the storm. The city sleeps, but the hunger of the poppy is always awake. The plant of joy has become the harvest of sorrow, and the long night of the 20th century is far from over. We leave the neon-lit streets now, carrying the weight of this transformation. We have witnessed the migration of the ghost. We have seen the miracle curdle into a curse, and we know, with a heavy heart, that the story is not yet done. The ghost is still hungry. The ghost is still moving. The ghost is waiting for the next chapter. We arrive, finally, at the present day, standing amidst the echoes of this long, complex history. The river of time has carried us from the sun-baked mud of ancient Sumer, through the candlelit laboratories of the 19th century, past the neon haze of the Jazz Age, and deposited us here, on the shores of the modern world. It is a world of fiber optics and glass, of satellite networks and digital noise, a world that prides itself on its conquest of the physical realm. We have mapped the human genome. We have sent telescopes to the edge of the universe. We have connected every corner of the globe in a web of instant communication. And yet, if you look closely, past the screens and the steel, you will find that the ancient ghosts are still with us. They have not been exorcised by our technology. They have merely found new places to haunt. Picture, if you will, a landscape far removed from the boardrooms of pharmaceutical companies or the bustling streets of New York. Cast your mind's eye to the rugged, wind-swept valleys of the Hindu Kush, or the humid, mist-shrouded hills of the Golden Triangle. Here, under the same indifferent sun that shone upon the Pharaohs, the poppy fields still bloom. They stretch out for miles, a patchwork quilt of white, pink, and vibrant red, rippling in the mountain breeze. They are staggeringly beautiful, a testament to nature's ability to create art from the soil. The petals are as delicate as ever, fluttering like the wings of millions of butterflies. The seed pods, those swollen, glaucous crowns, still stand like silent sentinels, waiting for the harvester's blade. These fields are indifferent to the empires that have risen and fallen in their name. They do not care about the laws written in distant capitals. They do not care about the wars fought to control them or to burn them. They simply follow the ancient rhythm of the seasons: the seed, the sprout, the flower, the milk, the decay. They are a biological constant in a world of chaotic variables. To the poppy, humanity is just a passing weather system, a species that stumbled upon its secret and became ensnared. The plant remains the master, and we remain the subjects, bound by a chemistry that is older than the oldest stone tablet. Let us zoom in, past the flower, down to the molecular level. In the invisible realm of atoms, the ghost resides. It is a specific arrangement of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, C21H23NO5. It is a structure of elegance and rigidity. It has not changed since Felix Hoffmann stirred his beaker in 1898. It has not evolved. While we have changed our clothes, our languages, and our governments, the molecule has remained frozen in time. It is an artifact, a fossil of the 19th century surviving in the 21st. This molecule is the ghost in the vein. It haunts the modern world with a persistence that defies all logic. It carries the weight of millions of stories, a silent library of biographies that all end in the same gray fog. It is a legacy of our desire to escape the sensation of pain, a desire that has not diminished with the march of progress, but perhaps has only grown sharper. For all our advancements, we have not cured the fundamental ache of the human condition. We still suffer. We still grieve. We still feel the crushing weight of existence. And as long as we feel, the molecule offers its terrible, seductive solution. Consider the geography of the ghost today. It is broken free from the specific enclaves of the past. It is no longer confined to the Victorian nursery or the jazz club or the inner-city alleyway. It has democratized. It has migrated into the suburbs, into the farmhouses of the rural heartland, into the high-rise apartments of the wealthy. It flows along the interstate highways, carried in the glove compartments of family cars. It hides in the bathroom cabinets of high school students and the desk drawers of executives. The tragedy of the modern era is the invisibility of the user. In the days of the opium den, the vice was contained, visible, a spectacle of the other. Today, the user is the neighbor. The user is the person standing in line at the grocery store, looking entirely normal, yet fighting a titanic, silent battle against the chemistry in their blood. The biography of the molecule has become the biography of the everyman. It is a story written in the Rust Belt towns where the factories have closed, leaving behind a vacuum of purpose that the drug is all too eager to fill. It is written in the fishing villages and the mining camps, in the places where physical pain is the currency of labor. We see the echo of the amber bottle in the modern prescription pill. For a brief, tragic window in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the cycle repeated itself almost exactly. A new generation of miracle opioids, Oxycontin, Vicodin, Percocet, was marketed with the same hubris as Bayer's heroin. Doctors were told they were non-addictive. Patients were told they were safe. The fifth vital sign, pain, was to be extinguished at all costs. And just like the mothers in the Victorian nursery, modern society invited the wolf back into the home. When the pills ran out, when the prescriptions were tightened, the ghost of heroin was waiting in the shadows, cheaper and more potent, ready to catch those who fell. The transition was seamless because the chemistry is the same. The brain does not read the label on the bottle, it only recognizes the shape of the key. In the quiet of the night, we look back at the journey of this substance, and we see a mirror. Heroin is the mirror of our desire, cracked and dark. It reflects our vulnerability. It reflects our intolerance for suffering. It shows us that for all our intellectual sophistication, we are still biological machines, ruled by receptors and neurotransmitters. We seek relief. We seek silence. We seek to engineer our own peace. The modern world is a loud place. It is a cacophony of demands, a relentless stream of information, a pressure cooker of expectations. In this noise, the promise of the poppy, The promise of oblivion is a siren song. The drug offers a pause button for the world. It turns down the volume of reality. It wraps the user in a blanket of warm, fuzzy indifference. For the person who has been traumatized, for the person who is lonely, for the person who simply cannot bear the sharpness of the light, the drug feels like a return to the womb. It is the whole gill, the plant of joy, whispering the same lie it whispered to the Sumerians. Close your eyes. Nothing matters. You are safe here. But we know the price of this safety. We know that the peace is a prison. The modern narrative of heroin is one of a gray, timeless fog where the outside world ceases to matter. The user becomes a ghost while still alive, haunting their own life, watching their potential dissolve into the pursuit of the fix. The timeline of the addict is a loop, a closed circle of craving and relief that disconnects them from the linear flow of time. Birthdays, holidays, milestones, they all blur into the background. There is only the immediate now, the immediate need. And the ghost has grown teeth. In the modern era, the molecule has been joined by synthetic cousins fentanyl and its analogs, laboratories creations that strip away even the organic origins of the poppy, distilling the potency into something purely mathematical and deadly. The alchemist's lantern has become a nuclear reactor. The risk of death, once a shadow, is now a constant companion. The silence of the nod too often becomes the silence of the grave. The sleep of the poppy becomes the big sleep. As we reflect on this, we feel a profound sense of melancholy for the alchemy that went wrong. We think of Friedrich Serturner, holding his flask of crystals up to the candlelight, believing he had found a gift for humanity. We think of Heinrich Dresser, proud of his heroic syrup. They were not villains. They were explorers who stumbled into a dragon's den thinking it was a sanctuary. They underestimated the complexity of the human spirit and the tenacity of the human body's dependence. They failed to understand a fundamental truth, that nature can never truly be tamed, only borrowed, and the interest rate on that loan is steep and sorrowful. We cannot chemically subtract pain without also subtracting life. We cannot synthesize joy without also synthesizing despair. The balance of the universe demands it. The poppy, in its silent wisdom, knows this. It gives its milk freely, but it demands the soul in return. Yet, even in this dark history, there are moments of grace. We must acknowledge the mercy the drug has shown to the dying. In the hospices and the cancer wards of the modern world, the descendants of the poppy morphine and its kin still perform their ancient, sacred duty. They ease the passage. They soften the final, jagged edges of life. They allow the terminally ill to rest. In this context, the molecule is still an angel, albeit a dark one. It is the hand of God, described by Galen, reaching out to soothe the brow of the suffering. The duality remains. It is both the curse and the cure, the poison and the medicine, depending on the hand that holds it and the intent behind the dose. The story of heroin is, ultimately, a biography of us. It is a story about the limits of our endurance. It exposes the fragility of the human mind and the incredible power of the human drive for comfort. It reminds us that we are not separate from nature. We are deeply, inextricably bound to it. The receptors in our brains, the mu-opioid receptors, evolved over millions of years to interact with our own internal chemistry, our endorphins. The poppy just happens to possess a key that fits that lock better than our own keys do. It is a biological coincidence of tragic proportions. So, where does that leave us? We stand at the end of the documentary, the credits ready to roll. The camera pulls back, rising up from the city streets, up through the neon glow, up through the clouds. We drift back across the oceans, back across the centuries. We return to the field. The sun is setting now over the ancient plains. The heat of the day is dissipating, replaced by the cool, purple bruise of twilight. The shadows of the mountains stretch long across the earth. The wind dies down. The poppies are closing their petals for the night, folding in on themselves like hands in prayer. The silence of the desert returns, vast and absolute. The Hul Gil sleeps. The miracle medicine sleeps. The ghost in the vein sleeps. We are left with a quiet respect for the terrible power of this plant. It is a reminder that there are forces in this world that are older and stronger than our will. It is a reminder to tread carefully in the garden of the gods. The bottle has been shattered, the laws have been written, the wars have been fought, but the flower remains. It waits in the soil, patient and eternal. As you drift off to sleep, let the heavy, complex history of this molecule dissolve. Let the ambition of the alchemists and the tragedy of the artists fade into the distance. Let the noise of the modern world fall away. There is only the field, the wind, and the stars turning slowly overhead. The story is told. The lesson is learned. The book is closed. Rest now. The darkness is not a drug. It is a natural peace. The silence is not a chemical void. It is the gentle breath of the world. Sleep, safe in the knowledge that while the ghost may haunt the history of man, the dawn will always bring a new light, and the resilience of the human spirit is the one thing stronger than the tear of the poppy.